Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're a focused learner looking for a direct, structured, and no-nonsense way to finally tackle those tough projects you've been putting off, you're in the exact right place. Today, we're breaking down a practical guide to overcoming procrastination and starting difficult tasks using a really fascinating psychological framework known as the catalyst effect. We're going to map out exactly how your brain works when it's stuck and, more importantly, how to get it unstuck. Okay, let's dive into this.
So, we've all been there, right? You're lying in bed, it's 2 a.m., and bam, you are hit with an absolute bolt of inspiration. A brilliant idea for a project, a creative pursuit, or maybe a big life change. But then, morning rolls around. And instead of jumping right in, you tell yourself, I'll start when I feel a little more prepared. You literally sit on the sidelines of your own life waiting for a specific burst of confidence or some neon sign from the universe telling you the timing is completely perfect. But days turn into weeks, and well, that feeling never seems to arrive.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core of the problem. If you're waiting for that ready light to finally turn green, I actually have some great news for you. You aren't lazy and you aren't unmotivated. You're just caught in a psychological trap. Notice the contrast here. On the left side, you see the expectation we all hold, that readiness is a requirement that must be met before we can take action. But on the right is the actual reality. Readiness isn't a requirement, it's a reward. And it usually only comes after you begin.
So here's our roadmap for today's explainer, designed to immediately lower your anxiety about starting. First, the myth of feeling ready. Second, the catalyst effect. Third, how movement creates momentum. Fourth, 3 steps to start right now. And finally, becoming the catalyst.
Kicking things off with Section 1, the myth of feeling ready, and exposing the trap of waiting for a sign. We really need to actively dismantle this massive societal myth that you must feel 100% confident before beginning a difficult task. Honestly, it's a trap, and it keeps incredibly capable people totally paralyzed. We tend to look at highly successful, mentally strong individuals, and we just assume they wake up every morning feeling entirely fearless, right? But the truth we found in our source material is quite the opposite. The individuals you admire most usually start their endeavors feeling completely uncertain. They don't have it all figured out on day one. They simply realize that the feeling of being ready or motivated is something you earn by showing up. It is not a prerequisite for stepping onto the playing field.
Moving into Section 2, the catalyst effect and the psychological power of action before readiness.
To understand why this actually works, we have to look at a concept called self-efficacy. As you can see defined here, this is the deep-seated belief that you can handle challenges because you've survived them before. It's literally the foundation of an unbreakable mindset. But here's the trick your brain plays on you. You absolutely cannot build self-efficacy by sitting on a couch and thinking about it. Your brain is waiting for hard proof of your capabilities. It wants evidence, and you can only provide that evidence through action.
Which brings us to Section 3, movement creates momentum, and the messy reality of taking action.
If action is the only way to build confidence, we kind of have to accept that the initial phase of progress is rarely glamorous. In fact, it's often quiet, it's messy, and it forces us to push through a thick cloud of uncertainty. I want you to think about classic anime underdogs for a second. Characters like Tenjiro from Demon Slayer or Naruto. When they first set out on their epic journeys, did they feel ready to fight terrifying villains? Absolutely not. No way. They were terrified, they failed constantly, and they struggled through every single step. But they didn't win because they were perfect from the start. Every flawed, imperfect attempt taught them a lesson that no textbook or training montage ever could.
So, the crucial point is this: movement creates its own momentum. Winning and building real mental strength comes from the willingness to keep moving forward even when you're exhausted, bruised, and full of doubt. The action itself is the engine that generates the momentum you need to finish the task.
All right, let's get practical with Section 4, 3 steps to start now. This is a practical toolkit to override the brain's desire to wait. Now that we understand the psychology behind this, we need some tactics. Here are the 3 precise steps we're going to use to force our brains out of overthinking mode right now. First, we will lower the bar. Second, we will reframe failure as feedback. And third, we will use action as a pattern interrupt. Let's break these down one by one.
Okay, step 1. When you're looking at a massive project or a difficult life change, the future can feel like an impossible, crushing weight. So I want you to physically and mentally slow down for a second. Stop trying to carry the weight of an entire year or even a whole month on your shoulders today. Your only job in step 1 is to lower the bar. Narrow your entire focus down to just the next 5 minutes. Can you survive the next 5 minutes? Removing that enormous projection of the future immediately lowers your anxiety and makes starting actually possible.
Because as you can see from the examples on this slide,
Resilience doesn't grow from grand, dramatic gestures. It grows from tiny, repeated, small wins. Sending just one short email, writing a single sentence of that report, doing literally one push-up. By asking yourself to take just one impossibly small step today, you're essentially tricking your brain into starting without triggering its fear response.
Now, once you start, you will inevitably stumble. That's just a reality. And that's exactly where step 2 comes in. You must reframe failure. One of the hardest parts of starting is the fear of falling down. But highly resilient people don't view failure as a life sentence. They view it as a brutally honest data report, a feedback loop showing you exactly what to adjust next time. Instead of playing the victim and asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you shift the narrative entirely. You ask, "What is this moment teaching me about my strength?"
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is understanding what happens when you're stuck in a spiral of overthinking. Constantly replaying all the ways things could go wrong. Your brain is essentially closed for business in the present moment. You're trapped in your own head. Step 3 is understanding that action acts as a hard pattern interrupt. It completely shatters that loop.
By taking a tiny physical action, you're sending a direct, undeniable signal to your nervous system. Something as simple as taking a brisk 5-minute walk or doing a quick grounding ritual like deep breathing or stretching. These actions tell your brain, "Hey, I am the manager of this mind, not its servant. We're doing this now." It grounds you right back in the physical present. And slowly, that elusive feeling of readiness begins to follow the physical action you've just taken.
And that brings us to our final section, Section 5, Becoming the Catalyst and Getting the World Ready for You.
It is time to shift from feeling stuck and anxious to feeling entirely empowered to make a change. Look, the world isn't going to hand you a neatly packaged, perfect moment. The world wasn't always ready for your unique gifts. So, you have to be the one to get the world ready for you. Progress doesn't have to be loud or dramatic or perfect to count. Moving forward even a tiny fraction of an inch is still moving forward. And the readiness, the confidence, the motivation you've been waiting for, it will slowly, inevitably follow the imperfect actions you take today.
So I want to leave you with this provocative question. What is one small step you are going to take today, right after this explainer ends, even if you don't feel entirely ready? I highly encourage you to share your goal down in the comments. Declaring it publicly can often be the very first spark you need to ignite your own catalyst. Thank you so much for joining me, for learning with me, and until next time, keep moving forward and take care.